Welcome to episode 39 of the STEM Sessions podcast, published on December 27th, 2026. This is the podcast that says it's okay to do your own research on STEM topics, even if you don't have any fancy credentials. I am your host, Cody Colborn. So here's another episode based on research I did for my winter solstice hikes over at SoCal Science Hikes. They were incredibly fun, by the way, so if you are in Southern California, check us out over on meetup.com. Again, that group is SoCal Science Hikes, and we do lots of kind of beginner-based hikes where we teach science along the way. One of the topics I discussed during the hike was mistletoe and the tradition of kissing under the plant. So the first part of this episode is a straightforward discussion of our local botany and the science of mistletoe. The second part is about the origin of the tradition of kissing under the mistletoe. A theme of that hike was the crossover between winter solstice holiday traditions and their science and natural history. I just kind of assumed that mistletoe would be a good example to start off the hike because it has striking visuals of green balls of mistletoe in our leafless western sycamores, and I was certain that the tradition must go back quite a ways in history, perhaps Roman or Greek, perhaps Gaelic. But as it turns out, my assumption about the history of the tradition was wrong, but I had to sift through a lot of internet garbage to figure it out. So I thought I'd save you all the trouble by sharing it here. This is the STEM Sessions Podcast, episode 39, Mistletoe, the Plant and the Meme. When walking through parks and down trails here in Southern California, you'll often encounter large balls of green leaves in the upper branches of trees like western sycamores. It's most obvious during the fall and winter when the tree has gone dormant and lost its leaves, when the green ball really stands out then. Most people probably don't pay attention to the sight, or they do, but they don't really know what they're looking at. But what we're seeing is big balls of mistletoe. This isn't technically the mistletoe we think of when we think of Christmas. That's European mistletoe, scientific name Viscum album. It grows throughout Europe and is the only species in Britain, which is where it became popularly linked to the holiday season. North American mistletoe is in a different genus entirely, the genus Phoradendron. And over 30 species are on the continent. Incidentally, depending on how you categorize, there are up to 1,500 species of mistletoe worldwide, every continent but Antarctica. In California, we have about 10 species found from the deserts to oak woodlands to conifer forests. Species you're most likely to encounter in the non-desert areas of Southern California is the big leaf mistletoe, scientific name Phoradendron macrophyllum. This species is also found throughout the western U.S. Now, mistletoe is a parasitic plant which attaches itself to a tree or shrub. It connects to the host plant using a connective appendage called a haustorium. And that's the appendage it uses to steal water and nutrients. Now, technically speaking, mistletoe could kill its host plant by stealing too many resources, but I've never seen a tree with mistletoe on it look sick or dying on my hikes. Granted, that could also be a big case of survivorship bias, but it makes some logical sense. Mistletoe can't move, so why kill the plant that's keeping you alive? This isn't a parasitic situation like a wasp laying its eggs on a caterpillar, which is then used as food after the eggs hatch. Those insects eventually leave, so they don't care if the host dies. Now also, mistletoe leaves are green, and they're green year-round. Green indicates the presence of chlorophyll, which means mistletoe is capable of making its own food via photosynthesis. So technically, mistletoe is a hemi- or half-parasitic plant. How much energy it makes from photosynthesis versus taking from the host plant really depends on the species as well as the location. You should never consume or touch, for that matter, any plant that you can't identify with 100% certainty. And mistletoe is no exception, as it contains phototoxin, a chemical that can cause gastrointestinal issues when consumed. The toxin is found in all parts of the plant, including the white berries, but the same berries that make it an appealing winter holiday decoration. But while toxic to humans and pets, mistletoe is a valuable source of food in the winter for birds and mammals such as deer, squirrels, porcupines, bluebirds, robins, doves, etc. And in North America, it is a host plant to 3 species of butterflies, which means it's a plant that the butterflies need to reproduce and grow. So while mistletoe is considered generally toxic, there is some nuance to that statement. American mistletoe, again the genus Phoradendron, may be significantly less toxic than European mistletoe, the genus Viscum. A paper in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine from 1997 looked at the outcomes of over 1,700 exposures and concluded, quote, accidental ingestion of American mistletoe is not associated with profound toxicity, unquote. Other poison control centers warn against only minor irritation. The ASPCA considers American mistletoe toxic to dogs, cats, and horses, with clinical signs being vomiting, diarrhea, low blood pressure, difficulty breathing, and low heart rate. So I guess better safe than sorry. As far as dispersal goes, most mistletoe is spread via birds. Birds eat the berries and then defecate the seeds on the branch of another tree. Seeds are also sticky and adhere themselves to the bird's beak. The bird then wipes its beak on a branch to dislodge the seeds, which then stick to the branch and propagate a new plant. Seed dispersal via an animal is called zookery. But a few mistletoe species have evolved a secondary means of spreading seeds, ballistic dispersal, also called ballicory. Hydrostatic pressure builds within the berries, eventually causing the berry to explode and projecting the seed at velocities upwards of 50 miles an hour. Often there is enough kinetic energy in the seeds for them to reach neighboring trees, and perhaps this is to improve the chances of the host plant not becoming overtaxed with too many mistletoe plants. Now moving on to the holiday lore of mistletoe. If you do an internet search for the origin of the kissing under the mistletoe tradition, the first batch of results will agree that the tradition is linked to the Old Norse stories about the death of Balder. In fact, I just opened up a search engine and typed in what is the origin of the kissing under the mistletoe tradition, and the AI overview of the search results, as many of the top results all point to the Balder stories. And many of these sites have a reputation for trustworthiness, or at least you think have a reputation for trustworthiness. The BBC states, quote, ancient Norwegian and Scandinavian tales agree that mistletoe has meanings of love and friendship. It is said that the mistletoe's white berries are tears that the goddess of love called Frigg cried for her son Balder, and that she announced that mistletoe should be a plant of love. History.com states, quote, when the god Odin's son Balder was prophesied to die, his mother Frigg, the goddess of love, went to all the animals and plants of the natural world to secure an oath that they would not harm him. But Frigg neglected to consult with the unassuming mistletoe, so the scheming god Loki made an arrow from the plant and saw that it was used to kill the otherwise invincible Balder. According to one sunnier version of the myth, the gods were able to resurrect Balder from the dead. Delighted, Frigg then declared mistletoe a symbol of love and vowed to plant a kiss on all those who passed beneath it. The Smithsonian Magazine states, quote, in Norse myth, the god Balder is mistakenly killed by an arrow of mistletoe, after which the plant becomes synonymous with his grieving mother's undying love. Almanac.com states, the kissing tradition dates back to ancient Norse mythology. According to legend, the goddess Frigga declared mistletoe a symbol of love after it was used to harm her son Balder. From then on, anyone standing beneath the mistletoe was to receive a kiss of peace and affection. Incidentally, Frigga are more than likely the same character in Norse mythology. That's just different names for them. Live Science states, the plant, i.e. mistletoe, was sacred to Frigga, the god of love, but Loki, commonly known as the god of mischief, shot Frigga's son with a spear or in some tellings an arrow carved from mistletoe. Frigga revived her son under the mistletoe tree and decreed that anyone who stands under the mistletoe tree deserves not only protection from death but also a kiss. NPR states, in some later versions of the story, Frigg's tears over her son's death become mistletoe berries, symbolizing her love. Now, I guess to NPR's credit, it doesn't directly link it to the kissing tradition, but it still is the same incorrect information. And really, that's just a few of the results I could cite. Now, the death of Balder is a real story. It appears in both the prose Edda and the poetic Edda, which are close to primary sources for Norse mythology as we have. Mistletoe plays a major role, but it has nothing to do with love and kissing. That part is simply not in the text. In fact, Time magazine clearly states it that Baldur's death involves mistletoe, but it's got nothing to do with kissing or Christmas. To paraphrase the prose Edda, here is the story. Balder was the son of Freya and Odin. He was everyone's favorite. When he was prophesied to die, Odin traveled to Hel to speak to a witch who was ultimately not much help. Freya was more successful as she secured an oath not to harm Balder from everything in the world: people, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, everything. Feeling relief, family and friends started a pastime of hurtling different objects at Balder to find out if he was truly invulnerable. And Balder, boiling over with confidence, was a willing participant. Loki, always the antagonist to keep the plot moving forward, disguised himself as a servant woman and got Freya to admit she got an oath from everything but this small tree called mistletoe. It was small enough that it could surely cause no harm, so she didn't pursue an oath. Loki finds the mistletoe and fashions a wand or a small spear from its branch. And during the next session of Let's Throw Things at Balder and See If It Hurts Him, Loki tricks Balder's brother into hurling the spear of mistletoe, which impales Balder and kills him. The version in the Poetic Edda is mostly the verbal sparring between Odin and the witch in Hel. And while a fun read if you enjoy Old Norse poetry, it doesn't really provide any additional information, at least not pertinent to this discussion. But if you want to read it for yourself, I recommend Jackson Crawford's The Poetic Edda Expanded Second Edition that was just published. It's a great read, and the translation is more in modern English rather than kind of the old classical archaic English. So it's a lot easier to follow and understand by today's standards. So Freya did not bless mistletoe, nor is she even the goddess of love. Norse gods don't have those titles. They were more personality archetypes. And Freya's tears certainly didn't become the white berries of the mistletoe plant, and she didn't vow to kiss and bless those who found themselves under mistletoe. Modern pagans made all of that up in order to fabricate a connection to the old ways. And when enough sites and YouTube videos and Instagram stories repeat the same fabrication, the internet reports it as fact. And when questioned, they'll say, well, not all poems were recorded from those days, so we can't say what is true and what isn't. Now, we almost certainly are missing poems from that time period, potentially dozens, if not hundreds. But a few legitimate Old Norse scholars believe it's more likely that there is a missing poem in which the gods punished mistletoe for its role in Baldur's death by changing it from a tree to the parasitic plant it is today. That ending is a much better thematic fit to Old Norse poetry in general. So what's the real origin story of kissing under the mistletoe tradition at Christmas? Time magazine published a good write-up in 2018, and it'll be linked in the show notes. In 1719 and 1720, John Colbatch, an English apothecary and physician, wrote 2 books on mistletoe, and he included an entire chapter on mistletoe superstitions and customs, but never mentioned anything about kissing under it. The earliest evidence in print is a song from 1974 in England, so it's most likely the tradition began sometime between 1721 and 1783, so let's just call it the mid-1700s. Then, in 1820, American author Washington Irving wrote about the tradition after visiting England, and that seemed to accelerate its increase in popularity. So let's imagine a party in mid-1700s England. The party is attended by socially conservative people who maintain certain properness in public. A young lad who perhaps has consumed a bit of liquid courage is attracted to a young lady across the room. Looking for a way to break the ice, he notices that she is standing under mistletoe, a common holiday decoration with its green leaves and festive white berries. He approaches with fake confidence and says, "Milady, I see you're standing under mistletoe. Did you know that there is an ancient Gaelic tradition that says if two people are standing under mistletoe, they must share a kiss lest misfortune fall upon them?" The young lady, excited by his brashness, replies, "Good sir, I am a proper lady and would never engage in such public behavior. But if tradition says we must, we must." The young lad probably then bragged to his friends, and the young lady probably swooned to her friends while retelling the story. And the rest is history. Thank you for listening to this episode of the STEM Sessions podcast, a podcast researched, written, and produced by Cody Colborn. This episode's music is titled "Void to the World" and was composed by Alexander Nakarada and can be found on pixabay.com. The show notes and transcript can be found at thestemsessions.com, which is also the best place to provide feedback, corrections, and value-for-value support. Remember, doing your own critical research will always be to your benefit, and any pundit or scientist that tells you, "Hey, just trust me, bro," or scolds you for fact-checking and questioning isn't offering true education. So until the next one, keep learning.